Am I the a-hole for telling my dad that he was selfish and having me wasn't worth what he did to my mom? My parents broke up 6 months ago. I came home from a trip to my grandparents to basically total chaos. My dad is gay and has been cheating on my mom for their entire relationship, and she found out in a really, really bad way. It's completely destroyed my mom. She's trying to be okay for me, but I know she's not okay because she cries a lot when she thinks I'm not around, and she looks so sad all the time. I'm trying to help and not make it any harder for her, but I am furious at my dad. I refused to see him or speak with him until he finally got to me through a friend's parents and begged to talk. His whole family has disowned him and most of his friends. He said it would be too much to lose me to just because he's gay. I asked him if he always knew or if he found out after he married mom. He said he always knew, but he was scared and he wanted a family. I asked him if him being scared was worth ruining my mom's life, and he said that they got me out of it at least. That blew me over the top, but I told him he was selfish and disgusting, and that I would rather not exist than have a father like him. I left, and apparently he's telling everyone I hate him for being gay. So my friend's parents have been trying to talk me into forgiving him because he made a mistake out of fear. And me telling him I would rather not exist broke him. A friend says I'm being a homophobic a-hole, but I see my mom, and I don't think I can ever forgive my dad because he knew what he was doing. I don't feel bad about what I said, but am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. He's not losing you because he's gay. He's losing you because he cheated on your mother for their entire relationship. Yep, spell it out for the parents he is using to contact you too, OP. Tell them it's not about sexuality. It's about the choice to hurt and betray people instead of being honest. Also, point out he's a manipulative liar willing to throw you under the bus so he can claim victim status. Not the a-hole. He lied to her for years, got to marry him under false pretenses, cheated on her, and essentially used her to hide himself and be his baby-making machine. Not the a-hole. It's not the fact that your father knew he was gay from the beginning before his marriage, but the fact that he practically used your mom for his own selfish needs and then cheats on her. That just makes me so angry. Phobia has nothing to do with the fact that what your father did was unforgivable, and you have every right in your mind to be angry. I'm angry with you. What did he expect? Just get your mom pregnant, leave her, take you, and raise you with another man in his life? Excuse me? What is he smoking? He can adopt or get a surrogate, not emotionally manipulate a woman who thought she married someone who genuinely loved her, only to use her body for his own purposes. That makes me sick. Actual physical pain. There was no validation or any kind of apology that would make any of this okay. I hope you and your mother are able to recover from this. Not the a-hole. I assume you would have been equally angry at him if he was straight and cheated on your mom? Yep. The only thing that made this worse is that he always knew he couldn't do right by my mom and used her on top of everything. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my mom her dream for my wedding stopped being possible the day my dad died? My dad died when I was 7 years old. He was my favorite person. My mom's favorite person at a time, and I kind of think he was the person who could complement our personalities enough for us to be super close. Even as a little kid, I kind of knew that, and it broke the two of us when he died. But then she found someone else. She found Luke. She married Luke when I was 9, and he became her person. Luke, upon realizing my dad had been the parent I was closest to, tried to fill that space and was unwilling to listen when I said that space was reserved for my dad. It caused some tension. Over time, I let some things go. They would call themselves my parents or my mom and dad. I always called him Luke. I always told people close to me about my dad and would make sure it was known Luke was not dad. Our relationship now that I am several years out of their house is amicable but not close. I don't hate them, but my mom and I still don't mesh well. Luke still wants to fill that role my dad had, and I still don't want him to. Ever since I got engaged, my mom has been more present. She has told me how she always dreamed of this day, etc. Over time, she brought up how she and Luke couldn't wait to see him walk me down the aisle and give me my father-daughter dance, and how they were excited to be mom and dad of the bride. I told her none of that was happening. She told me it was always her dream though, that from the time she found out she was expecting a girl, she couldn't wait to watch me on my dad's arm and in his arms for a dance. I told her that was possible when dad was alive, but not when he was gone. She told me it was still possible. There was still my dad, Luke, and that he deserved it. They both did. I told her I was walking with my fiancé and no father-daughter dance would happen. I told her he was not going to be listed as father of the bride anywhere because he is not my father. I ended up telling her to leave and I went back to last contact. Then my mom showed up unannounced and started to tell me all about this dream again and what it meant to her. And I told her clearly, without hesitation, that her dream stopped being possible when my dad died because he was not here to do that stuff and that Luke was never going to be filling my dad's role for me. I told her she might be able to switch them out easily, but I was not. She left in tears, telling me I had punished her for moving on and punished my dad, Luke, for not being my real dad. That she and my dad deserved better than that, and I was spiteful. Am I the a-hole? Edited to add more additional details. About Luke. He cut up cards I had made / given my dad for Father's Day that my dad had kept safe before he died, and cut up the back and left the front, and then turned them into a collage and acted like they were cards I had given him. When my mom and him brought out my birth certificate for something, he told me he couldn't wait to see his name on it instead of the old husband. He told me my dad had done nothing special and that he could do what my dad had done for me and my mom, but better. About mom. My mom just erased my dad from and added Luke to, then expected me to do the same. She even went as far as taking photo frames that had stuff like our family or dad and daughter, and replacing them with photos that included Luke instead of my dad. She also told me more than once that Luke was our new favorite person, or would say, Dad is our favorite person like always, and it was always in reference to Luke. Not the a-hole. You don't consider Luke as your father. Period. Your mom and Luke should accept it once and for all, and your mom should also cease her emotional blackmailing. This, not the a-hole to infinity. Maybe if Luke hadn't tried to replace your dad, he'd be in a much better standing with you. Even if it was so, it is all down to your decision. Be ready for the flying monkeys to come at you about how you're being unreasonable, etc., etc. I'd be ready to block the lot. Not the a-hole. You said it as nicely as you could and she kept pressing the issue. You were not unnecessarily cruel about it. You were just firm. Her and Luke trying to force the issue of him being your new dad from the start was not a healthy approach and was never going to give them the results that they wanted. It's your wedding and they need to respect your boundaries. This right here, and Opie's edits made me sad. Luke actively denigrating her dad and mom basically erasing him from her life. No wonder Opie's insistent that mom and dad will not be playing major roles at her wedding. They've really hurt her in the past and continue to do so. Not the a-hole. Opie's edits are absolutely heartbreaking. Her mom and Luke not only didn't do anything to ease into bringing Luke into her home, they actively tried to erase her father from her world. I'm honestly surprised that Opie allows them any access to her life. I would have gone no contact as soon as I was 18 based on Luke's heinous actions and mom's support of Luke's behavior. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my dad he has to pick up my son for their special lunches if my daughter and I aren't allowed to be in the same restaurant? I'm 46 female, have 2 brothers. Alan 50 male and James 44 male. Our dad, 75 male, has always preferred my brothers over me. If there was ever a dispute, I was the one punished or yelled at and was treated like I was automatically the one in the wrong, in both childhood and as an adult. My dad has a weekly lunch with his 3 brothers. They never include sisters. Every Friday since 1990. My dad called and asked if my son, Thomas, 8 male, could start attending. I was confused and asked why he would attend a lunch with just his grandpa and great uncles every week. My dad then told me that my brothers had been going every week for the past 10 years and he wanted to add the next generation. I pointed out that my dad has several grandsons, adopted in step, and asked if they were all invited. He said no, because Thomas is his only biological grandson. I was definitely shell-shocked at being excluded for 10 years, and then finding out my nephews, nieces, and daughter would also be excluded. But I only said, just let me know what time and place, and I'll bring him and my daughter, and I'll ask for a table on the opposite side of the restaurant and enjoy a mommy/daughter lunch together. She really enjoys those, and I thought it would make up for her being excluded from the big lunch. My dad said no, that he wanted me to drop my son off at his house and he would bring him home afterwards. The problem is that the restaurants they go to central to all my uncles are about 15 minutes from my house, whereas my dad's house is 45 minutes away. So he expects me to drive an hour and have to drop him off and back home, then wait for him to come back home. That would mean my daughter and I couldn't enjoy our own lunch out. I told him he could pick up my son, then go to the restaurant since it was probably closer to my house anyway. He said I was being petty because I never wanted to just let him enjoy his sons. I asked, how am I preventing that? By existing and not having a penis. He hung up on me. Later, my stepmom, 65 female, called and asked me to be more flexible. Since my dad is getting older and not in the best of health, that I should just let him enjoy his time with Thomas that he has left. She meant well, but my dad isn't dying or anything. He's pretty active for his age. I just said that he is welcome to pick Thomas up at my house and then take him to the lunch. And then he can call and find out where my daughter and I are and bring him back to me afterwards. Apparently, my dad didn't want me going out to lunch in the same area because he thinks if I know where they go, I'll crash their lunches and invite myself every week. I'm not sure where he got that idea. Maybe because I said my daughter and I would eat at the same place until they were done? It's not like my son will hide where they ate from me. He always talks about food. My dad and brothers think I'm the a-hole for not just dropping my son off at dad's house like he wants me to. Am I? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. He's a huge misogynist, and that's not what you want your son to be around. He is also awful for not including his adopted grandsons. I think it's time you limit contact with your dad. You'd be better off. We are currently only seeing my dad at family events. We have a huge family, so the kids only spend one-on-one time with him at these events and only for a few minutes. My dad also calls me to ask about the kids a couple of times a month. Not the a-hole. Thank you for not letting their nonsense be passed on to a younger generation. Go do something fun with your son and daughter instead. I'm not even sure how my dad got that way, but he definitely passed it on to my brothers. His parents, my grandpa and grandma, had always wanted a daughter, and I was the first girl born into the family in 3 generations. They treated me like a queen when they were alive, so I know it didn't come from my grandparents who also treated all of their daughters-in-law very well. I really have to appreciate the irony that only the daughter he refused to include was the only one of his children to birth a male child. Don't let your son get sucked into the family boys club. That's some gross behavior. Tell him you'll bring your son when you and your daughter are invited. I'm all for girls' nights/boys' nights, but this is family. That's a good idea. If he wants to include me and my daughter once every couple of months, we'll bring my son to the lunch occasionally. It's not as if no one else has ever been. Occasionally, when my cousins are in the town, the odd one of them will go to the lunch too. Even my girl cousins. I've just never been invited personally. Last story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to watch my sister-in-law's child even though she had a meltdown? I, 33 female, have a daughter, 5 female. My sister-in-law, long-term partner of my stepbrother Jake. Tina, 34 female, has a daughter Cassie, also 5, from a previous relationship. Every summer for the past few years, me, my step-siblings, and our partners have visited our parents at the holiday retreat they run, from anywhere between 4 to 7 weeks. This past summer, I was there for 6 weeks and Jake and Tina were there for 4. My husband was there for 3 weeks on and off due to work commitments, and I brought the nanny. During the 3rd week, Jake and Tina were there. My husband and I decided to take my daughter on a day trip, as the nanny had a day off and we were going a little stir-crazy. We told everyone at breakfast, and afterwards, when it's just the women at the table finishing our tea, Tina asked if we could take Cassie with us on our day out. I was very confused as to why Tina would ask this, as I have barely any interaction with Cassie. I find some of her behavior very off-putting, and I don't have a natural inclination towards children. And second, Tina and I don't know each other well enough that I'd ever consider asking her such a favor. I said no. It was just a family day out for the 3 of us and presumed that would be the end of it. But Tina insisted. She begged me to take Cassie and said she hasn't had a break the whole summer, that she's overwhelmed and would like to spend some time with just Jake. I said no again, and Tina asked if my nanny could watch Cassie for a few hours, but I told her it's the nanny's day off. Tina started to get tearful, saying she really thought that as a fellow mother I would understand needing a break, since I have someone employed for that very purpose. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just said goodbye to my mother and started to leave, and as I did, Tina burst into tears. My mother told me to go and she would calm Tina down. When we came back later that evening, Tina wasn't at dinner and my parents and Jake were babysitting Cassie. My mother said she had reached a compromise with Tina that they would watch Cassie for the evening so Tina could rest. They can't during the day as they are still actively running the retreat. The next day, Tina reappeared and everything was back to normal, though she was noticeably colder towards me, but it didn't bother me. A few days ago, we were discussing all getting together for Christmas in a group chat, and Tina said she was really looking forward to it, but that she hopes we could all be a bit more accommodating with the kids and that it takes a village. I just replied that I wouldn't be needing any accommodations, thanks, and the conversation moved on. My mother says while she understands why I said no, seeing the state Tina was in and the meltdown she had after I left, she would have said yes. She said I don't understand how tough it is because I have so much help. So am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. As others have said, asking was fine but guilting or acting entitled was not. And commenting on an element of this others haven't yet. It isn't your nanny's job to watch other people's kids, and you are not in a position to accept that responsibility for her. When my friends would ask if my nanny could pick their kids up or watch them after school, or other things, I would say, you'd have to ask her. Her hourly rate is X. I will let her know I'm okay with her also watching your kids that day if she feels comfortable with additional responsibility. Yes, I did say to Tina that since she's my employee, I'm responsible for allowing her time off in peace. So I wouldn't be asking her that on her day off. I didn't want her to feel pressured because she's traveling with us. Also, she's from an agency. There's a lot of paperwork involved in her watching my daughter, for insurance purposes. I'm not sure she's allowed to watch other kids. Kudos to you for not only standing up for yourself, but your nanny as well. If Tina knows how hard it is, she could recognize that foisting her daughter on someone else is ridiculous. If she needed help, she can hire her own babysitter/nanny. You are definitely not the a-hole.